The 1973 Tour de France was the 60th Tour de France, taking place June 30 to July 22, 1973. It consisted of 20 stages over 4,140.4 kilometers, ridden at an average speed of 33.918 kilometers per hour. Eddy Merckx, winner of the previous 4 editions, did not start the 1973 Tour, partly to avoid angry French fans and partly to please his sponsor. Instead he rode and won the 1973 Vuelta a Spa ±A and the 1973 Giro d'Italia. In his absence, Lewis Ocar ±A dominated the race, winning with a margin of more than 15 minutes. In 1973, a new team classification was added, the team points classification, calculated by adding the 3 best stage rankings per team. It would be calculated until 1988. Changes from the 1972 Tour de France. After the 1972 Tour de France, there were rumors that the 1973 Tour de France would become easier, to suit French cyclist Cyril Guimard better. However, when the 1973 Tour route was announced in December 1972, the organization had included 3 more mountains compared to 1972. Participants: the winner of the previous 4 editions, Eddy Merckx, had changed sponsors to the Italian Molteni. His contract said that he had to start in the 1973 Vuelta a Spa ±A and the 1973 Giro d'Italia, and Merckx thought it was impossible to start in 3 Grand Tours in 1 year, so he stayed away from the Tour. O'Connor, who was in great shape, was now the main favorite, with Fuente, Poulidor and Thevenot as his biggest threats. O'Connor was not the clear favorite. He had already crashed out of the Tour 3 times, and he was seen as fragile. Zeetemelk had changed teams, because he did not have the full support of his team leader. The Italian teams did not join the 1973 Tour de France, because no top French cyclist joined the 1973 Giro d'Italia. This meant that world champion Marino Basso and former Tour winner Felice Gimondi were absent. The Tour started with the following 12 teams, each with 11 cyclists. Race details: Zeetemelk won the opening prologue, 1 second ahead of Poulidor. In the first part of the next stage, Link won and took over the lead. O'Connor and Herman van Springel fell down when a dog crossed the road, but both suffered no serious damage. In the second part of that stage, Van Springel bridged the gap to Kataja, who had escaped. Van Springel did all the work to stay away, while Kataja did not help his team captain's rival. They stayed away until the end of the stage, where Kataja won the sprint, and Van Springel became the new race leader. In the third stage, a group with Guimard and O'Connor escaped. Van Springel, Zeetemelk, Fuentes, Thevenot and Poulidor were not in that group, and had to chase them. The group stayed away, Guimard won the sprint and Kataja became the race leader. More important for the final result was that O'Connor won more than 2 minutes on Zeetemelk, and more than 7 minutes on Fuente. In Stage 7, when the first mountains were climbed, O'Connor attacked, and only Zeetemelk could follow. A few kilometers from the summit, Zeetemelk had to let O'Connor go, and O'Connor finished solo. O'Connor became the new race leader, almost 3 minutes ahead of Zeetemelk. In the 8th stage, O'Connor and Fuente both attacked. O'Connor and Fuente did not like each other, and when Fuente stopped working, O'Connor was angry, especially when Fuente passed him just before the top of the Izoard to steal the points for the mountain classification. When Fuente had a flat tire, O'Connor did not wait for him, and left him behind, beating him by 1 minute at the finish line. All the others were far behind. Thevenot and Martinez followed after 7 minutes, the other pre-race favorites after 20 minutes. In the 13th stage, Poulidor crashed, and was taken away with a helicopter. In the 16th stage, the cyclists were slower than expected, and finished 1 hour after the latest time schedule. The train that they should have taken had already left, and they had to use buses. In the time trial in Stage 17, Fuente lost his second place in the general classification to Thevenot. Fuente tried to take it back in the mountain Stage 18, but he failed and even lost some time. Doping cases: 3 cyclists tested positive during the 1973 Tour de France: Barry Hoban, after the 9th stage, Claude Bourd, after the 13th stage, Michel Rox, after the 18th stage. All 3 received a fine of 1,000 Swiss francs, 1 month suspension and 10 minutes penalty time in the general classification. Stages: the 1973 Tour de France started on June 30, and had 2 rest days, in Divonne-les-Bains and Pira. Copyright now. Copyright is 2000. Classification leadership: there were several classifications in the 1973 Tour de France, 3 of them awarding jerseys to their leaders. The most important was the general classification, calculated by adding each cyclist's finishing times on each stage. The cyclist with the least accumulated time was the race leader, identified by the yellow jersey. The winner of this classification is considered the winner of the Tour. Additionally, there was a points classification, where cyclists got points for finishing among the best in a stage finish, or in intermediate sprints. The cyclist with the most points lead the classification, and was identified with a green jersey. There was also a mountains classification. The organization had categorized some climbs as either first, second, third, or fourth category. Points for this classification were won by the first cyclists that reached the top of these climbs first, with more points available for the higher categorized climbs. The cyclist with the most points lead the classification, but was not identified with a jersey in 1973. Another classification was the combination classification. This classification was calculated as a combination of the other classifications. Its leader wore the white jersey. The 5th individual classification was the intermediate sprints classification. This classification had similar rules as the points classification, but only points were awarded on intermediate sprints. In 1973, this classification had no associated jersey. For the team classification, the times of the best 3 cyclists per team on each stage were added. The leading team was the team with the lowest total time. The riders in the team that lead this classification wore yellow caps. Final results: General classification Other classifications The combativity award was given to Lewis O'Connor. References